Vasavyam Kalaya Hare Duvacha Dvapare Samanuprapte Tritiye Yuga Pareye Parye Advayam Varyas Hare Sutta Goswami Uvacha said, Dwapare, in the second millennium, Samanu Prapte, on the advent of Tritiye, third, Yuga, millennium, Parye, in the place of Jata, was begotten, Parasharat, by Parashara, Yogi, the great sage, Vasavyam, in the womb of the daughter of Vasu, Kalya, in the plenary portion, Hare, of the personality of Godhead. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Purport. There is a chronological order of the four millenniums, namely Satya, Dwarapa, Treta, and Kali. But sometimes there's an overlapping. During the reign of Vaivashvata Manu, there was an overlapping of the 28th round of the four millenniums, and the third millennium appeared prior to the second. In that particular millennium, Lord Shri Krishna also descends. Because of this, there was some particular alteration. The mother of the great sage was Satyavati, the daughter of the Vasu fisherman, and the father was the great Parasara Muni. That is the history of Vyasadeva's birth. Every millennium is divided into 3 periods, and each period is called a sandhya. Vyasadeva appeared in the third sandhya of that particular age. Text 15. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning oblation in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. Purport, the river Saraswati is flowing in the Bhadarika Ashrama area of the Himalayas. So the place indicated here is Samyaprasha in the Bhadarika Ashrama, where Shri Vyasadeva is residing. Text 16. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. Purport, the great sages like Vyasadeva are liberated souls, and therefore they see clearly past and future. Thus you can see the future anomalies in the Kali Yuga. And accordingly made arrangements for the people in general so they can execute a progressive life in this age, which is full of darkness. People in general in this age of Kali are too much interested in matter, which is temporary. Because of ignorance, they are unable to evaluate the assets of life and be interested in spiritual knowledge. Just a little bit. Note about Vyasadeva being able to see past, present, and future. The story is how there was one man who was sitting on a tree and he was soaring off a branch of the tree. And one man came along and said, if you continue soaring off the branch of the tree, you're going to fall down. He said, oh, come on, you're just speculating. So he just kept on soaring off the branch of the tree, and eventually the branch and himself fell down. And then he ran after the man and said, stop, stop. You must be an astrologer. Can you tell me my future? So the material nature is like that. Just like now it's supposedly fall, and actually we can see on the ground there are a lot of leaves, so something's falling. And after fall comes winter, generally speaking. Kali Yuga, there's anomalies in Kali Yuga, but generally speaking, there'll be something like closer to winter. And then after that comes spring, and then summer. Now, if I was trying to make a prediction, and I said, I think I've looked into my crystal ball, and I think soon winter's coming, and then I can predict far into the future, then spring will be there. Now I think, and my crystal ball is revealing more, I see summer coming after spring. Please give me a donation for my for my predictions. Probably no one would take me very seriously. Of course, if someone would take me seriously and gave me a donation, I'd probably reveal more things about how the world is working. So similarly, that's the way the material world works. It works in cycles. One thing follows another, not by accident. And for instance, in Chinese medicine, they can tell you where the different energies in the body are going to be at different times of the day. Like 11 o'clock, or around 1 o'clock in the morning, the energy of the liver is prominent. So if you wake up around 1 o'clock in the morning, you might have some inflammation of the liver. So check your clock if you wake up early. Similarly, not only that, but the generally speaking, one starts out as a child, and by very advanced prediction, we can predict that the baby is going to turn into a child. And then in the course of time, the child will turn into a youth. And then the youth will turn into a middle-aged person. And a middle-aged person will turn into an old people. And the old person will turn into a child again. So this is a cycle. This is how the material nature works. And one who is able to understand the cycles of material nature, he can predict past, present, and future. It's not a question of some kind of special power. It's a question of understanding just how things work. Just like when it gets too hot, we can predict it might rain sometime. Because that's how the material nature was formed. From heat came water. From water comes earth. And then from earth, when earth is dissolved, then it goes back. If you burn leaves, for instance, it goes back into ether and air. So there's a cycle, and it's a predictable cycle. So now we're in Kali Yuga, and if you wait around enough, all the predictions in Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll be able to personally see. You can watch the little people eating each other. And maybe take some photos for Satya Yuga. In case no one believes you. you were there. But the predictions are not so enlivening in Kali Yuga. And not only that, but we can see it's already there, except that we don't see maybe that previously, even 50 years ago, people were more peaceful than they are now. The people are believing that technology is actually helping them advance. But look what technology has done. Young people nowadays, they don't go out and play anymore, except on our property. They run around like Indians, little crazy Indians. Because they're devotees, so we're a little bit pure. On the other hand, children, you see them on the phone, not only children, but even adults, they're always on the phone. Sometimes you see pictures of families and they're sitting at the dinner table texting each other. They don't speak to each other, they text each other. That talking on the telephone has become old-fashioned. It's for the old people. New people only text each other. So this has become more and more impersonal because as our intelligence is taken away, then we find more pleasure in robots than we do in a relationship with a person. Matter of fact, nowadays they're creating robots. You may not be married, but you can buy a robot that looks exactly like a beautiful woman. And you can live with the robot. And the robot never talks back to you unless you program it to talk back to you. And it says only nice things to you. So people, because they want everything to be, they want to be the controller and the enjoyer without any effort, without any obligation, without any duties to anything. And therefore, as they become more and more degraded, they don't want to deal with people who are unpredictable. They want to deal with robots, with mechanical things, technological things. So you can believe that actually you become the controller. It's called Kali Yuga. But actually, material nature there's no real absolute taste to the material nature. And the more one becomes covered, the more one becomes frustrated, trying to enjoy the material energy. And therefore, even the robots, they always have these movies about robots, and the robots get frustrated with human beings. And they take over. The female robot gets frustrated with her male controller, and she says, I'm not going to listen to this guy anymore. And then she destroys him. And then the robots find another robot to live comfortably with. That's their idea. As a matter of fact, in material nowadays, the people who are running the world, at least those who have a lot of influence and a lot of resources, they want to make human beings into robots. Transhumanism. That you won't have to bring a computer with you anymore because they'll put a little computer in your brain. And therefore, you don't need a keyboard because you'll see everything inside your brain. Maybe you tap on your ear. A, B, C. And this is people's perfection. And they believe at the end of life, when you have to leave your body, no problem, because they'll figure out what your program is, what your code is. They believe people are just codes. They'll capture your code and put it on the USB stick. And whenever your ancestors want, they can plug you in. And you'll be there. Just as you were before. The same fool that you were before will still be there. And as explains here, because people are overwhelmed with the temporary. Although we're all spiritual beings and we're all eternal, and therefore there's eternal existence, and the eternal existence on the topmost platform is full of pleasure, full of happiness. Everything is pleasurable. Everyone is pleasurable. Nowadays, because we're identifying ourselves with matter, therefore we like some people and we dislike other people. We like some situations, we dislike other situations. And therefore one moment we're in heaven, the next moment we're in hell. When we like something, we're in heaven. As soon as we look around and we see someone, that was for Mukunda. As soon as we look around and we see someone, then immediately that we don't like, then immediately we're in hell. So what kind of existence is that? And as it says in the predictions, that things will only get worse. In other words, people will become even more adverse to their existence as things deteriorate. But the eternal is always there and is always available because that's who we are. We're always transcendental. We're beyond the material nature. But because of our consciousness has become absorbed in material nature, we think it's everything. Not only that, but material nature, because its very nature is always changing, therefore it's a very unsteady position. And because we're eternal, we don't like this ever-changing situation. Unpredictable. Therefore, everyone is trying to figure out how to control the thing, control their existence. But they can't do it, especially in Kali Yuga, because beyond the material nature is the soul. And it's the desires of the soul which determine how steady the material nature is. And if the soul's desires are unsteady, then the material nature becomes ever more unsteady. Just like in America, and maybe here also, they have this group of people who, when they're paid or whatever they're inspired, they burn down buildings. Called a TIFA, is that it? It's some kind of supposedly anti-fascist group. So a few years ago, they were just having riots all over America and burning down buildings and whatever else. You don't have that here yet. Anyhow, it's coming to your neighborhood soon. Because people's minds are unsteady, because they're trying to control the material nature, and it's frustrating. Therefore, frustration means anger, and from anger comes even more delusion. Therefore, the more one becomes deluded, then the more one takes shelter of the material nature, because it's the only shelter, it's the only happiness. And the more one becomes deluded and takes shelter of material nature, then the more one forgets one's spiritual nature. It becomes very far away. And without knowing ourselves as spiritual beings, our intelligence becomes completely bewildered and unsteady. And therefore we take shelter more and more in the material nature, which is more and more nirashaya, doesn't give us any shelter. Although it promises more and more, the glare of material nature, the illusion of material nature is to promise a shelter, but the more one becomes attached to material nature, then the less shelter one has. It's like in quicksand. If you're in quicksand, it's very uncomfortable. So you want to get out. But the more you struggle, the quicker you sink. So material nature is very uncomfortable for the soul, and the more one identifies itself and becomes disturbed by it, the more one tries to get out of it without taking shelter of Krishna, the more quickly one sinks into it, until one winds up in the lower species of life. Then the struggle is even more violent than in the human form of life. It's simply a struggle just to get something to eat. Just like the birds, you look at the birds, there's some seeds on the ground, they want to eat it, but they have to keep on looking both ways. Because they know, I'm going to eat these seeds, and someone else is going to come and eat me. So we're not quite on that level yet. We have a plate of prasadam, we keep on having to look both ways. Make sure our neighbor is a vegetarian. And he's not on a raw food diet. He doesn't eat raw people. That's Kali Yuga. Where even the human beings will have to do that eventually. So it's very problematic. And the only solution is to get out of the consciousness, because according to our consciousness, our desires develop. According to how we see things, then our desires are developed. And according to how our desires, and Krishna is arranging the material nature. As they gave the story before, there was one devotee, and he was always afraid to go on book distribution, because he was convinced that if he went on book distribution, someone would attack him. A little paranoid. Even the devotees are sometimes like that nowadays. They're afraid to go to the store in their dhoti. Even to go to the store, they had to put on pants and clothes. Maybe even a wig for sometimes. So this devotee was very much afraid someone might attack him on book distribution. So he refused to go for years. And then one day they forced him to go out on book distribution. He had nothing to do. He had a book in his hand. So the first person he walked up to took his fist and slammed him in the face and knocked him out. Krishna sent him. He was meditating on this for years. And it would have been a big disappointment. It would have destroyed his worldview if someone would have taken a book from him. So Krishna sent this man just to fulfill his desire, his intense meditation. So if we believe there's no Krishna, there's no God in control, everything is up to ourselves, it's dog eat dog and cat eat cat, whatever it is, mouse eat mouse, then the result is that's how the world will arrange itself for us, just to make sure that our desires are fulfilled, our worldview is not, we're not disappointed in how the material nature works. And if somehow or another we have a little bit of faith and believe that actually maybe Krishna can help us, then Krishna might be able to help us. And if we know how Krishna can help us, then that's even better. We should know what we should ask from Krishna. Many people believe in God in their own way. Even my mother believed in the fairies would help her. So everyone has to take shelter of some idea. Like one man who was in Bengal, and in Bengal, water transportation is very important. So he had a boat. That's how he made his living. So in Bengal, the rivers flow one way, the Ganges flow one way. So you have to walk up with your boat on a rocky shore. And you get to the top, then you can get some customers and the boat will sail down. Otherwise, it's practically impossible to go against the current. So one day he was praying to Krishna, "Oh Krishna, please help me. You know, these rocks are too much for me. Please come and help me. I can't do this anymore." So Krishna came and said, "Yes, how can I help you?" So he said, "My dear Lord," he said, "I'm a boatman. For years I've been walking up this rocky shore and my feet hurt. Can you please put pillows on the shore instead of rocks?" So Krishna said, "No problem." And he turned all the rocks into pillows. And the man said, "Thank you very much, Krishna." And then Krishna disappeared. So we have to know what to ask for Krishna. Prabhupada gives the example of the lady who's in the forest and she carries sticks on her head. So one day she's in the forest by herself, carrying the sticks to sell in the market, the wood, and suddenly the sticks fell off her head, but she couldn't put them back on her head. She prayed to Govinda, "Please to help me, please save me." So Govinda appeared and said, "Yes, what can I do for you?" So the lady said, "All these sticks have fallen off my head. Can you please put them back on?" So Krishna said, "No problem." So he put all the sticks back in her head and she said, "Thank you, Govinda. Now you can go." And Govinda disappeared. So we should know what to ask for from Krishna. Otherwise, we may ask for sticks to be put on our head, and that's the mercy we'll get from Krishna. Or we'll be able to sleep more peacefully because Krishna will give us a softer pillow to fulfill our desires. So we should know how the material nature works so that we don't get caught up in it, that the material nature works as a natural sequence, and if we have the right desires, then we may go to the heavenly planets. And if we have better desires, we act more in harmony with material nature and the spiritual nature, we can go back to the spiritual world. It's a question of understanding, at least theoretically, and having some faith in trying it out and see if the material nature works better with knowledge than with ignorance. Better based on spiritual values than on material values. Our whole problem is since Kali Yuga at least, people have been trained up material values and they have no idea what spiritual values are. And therefore they're always going in the wrong direction. Like the fly going to the fire. It's convinced it's going to, it's cold outside and there's a big fire. If I go into the fire, at least I'll get warmed up. So it flies right into the fire. Put, put, put. And one after another. Maybe the fly, before it hits the fire, thinks, "Oh, there's my fellow flies. They look like they're sunbathing." But they're not sunbathing. They got burnt. They got fried in the fire. So people are attracted by the glare of material nature, and they're flying into it in Kali Yuga, not understanding their real nature, and where real auspiciousness and prosperity lie, in the spiritual nature, rather than the material nature. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for lecture. When you're talking about story about this man who is distributed book, he have a fear that someday someone coming and hit him.
Yeah.
But Krishna understand also your desire the same and your fear, because it's bring him one first man, he's hit him. It's why doing this Krishna, because this not be him.
Because he had an intense desire. He was convinced that this is how reality works.
Yeah, this is also a desire.
Yes, of course.
Even he's a fear. He's scared about this.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
everything we're doing is desiring.
Krishna understands like this.
Krishna is right there in our heart. He senses our desire, just like one can understand the flavor of a flower by smelling it, the smell of a flower by smelling it, the aroma of a flower by smelling it. So Krishna, everyone is praying to Krishna. The whole world is praying to Krishna. And Krishna is fulfilling their prayers. He's neutral. Whatever desires we have, whatever, that's a prayer. And Krishna is fulfilling them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Therefore, a man has to elevate himself by his own mind and not degrade himself. The mind is a friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. For one who's conquered the mind, it's the best of friends, and for one who's failed to do so, his very mind will be the greatest enemy. For one who's conquered the mind, the super souls are a reach, for he has attained tranquility. For such a person, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. So according to our conception, we'll have desires. According to our desires, reality will be presented to us. Self-fulfilling. Anything else? Pala Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.